Burton Stephen Lancaster is remembered in film history as the 19th greatest star of classic Hollywood, as ranked by the American Film Institute, AFI. With his rugged physique, natural charisma, and complex acting ability, he was the embodiment of the American hero, an independent actor and producer who won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1960 for his portrayal of the charismatic preacher Elmer Gantry. He was known not only for his gritty yet emotional roles, but also for his radical political stance and courageous advocacy for civil rights. However, a late revelation, hidden after his death in 1994, revealed a personal conflict deeper than any of his complex on-screen roles. Burt Lancaster secretly dated several other prominent gay and bisexual actors of old Hollywood. The story of Burt Lancaster forces us to ask, what drove a man who was a fierce advocate for social justice and a challenger to the White House to spend his life hiding a part of his true nature and his loves? Was his tragedy simply a result of the external stigma of society, or was it the result of the pressure of public image to tolerate personal truth, even in the most private of lives? And how did that internal tragedy, the burden of pretending, protecting, and suppressing the truth for decades, eaten away at his spirit, forcing him to wait until his final years to find release by revealing the identities of his secret lovers? Let us explore the brilliant yet dark journey of one of America's most complex movie stars. Burton Stephen Lancaster was born on November 2, 1913 in New York City. He grew up in East Harlem in a working-class family with his father, James Lancaster, a postman, and his mother, Elizabeth Roberts. All four of his grandparents were Protestant Scots-Irish immigrants from the province of Ulster, Ireland. His childhood was filled with physical training. He showed a love and great skill in gymnastics while attending DeWitt Clinton High School, where he was also a basketball star. Although he was accepted to New York University on an athletic scholarship, Lancaster dropped out after his mother died of a cerebral hemorrhage. At the age of 9, Lancaster met Nick Cravat. The two developed a lifelong friendship. Together, they studied local theater and circus arts at Union Settlement. In the 1930s, they formed the acrobatic duo Lang and Cravat and joined the Kay Brothers Circus. It was this physical prowess and flexibility that would form the basis of his later acting style. However, in 1939, an injury forced Lancaster to give up the profession with great regret. After the United States entered World War II, Lancaster enlisted in the United States Army in January 1943. He served in the Army's 21st Special Services Division, providing USO entertainment to soldiers. He served in Italy under General Mark Clark from 1943 to 1945 and was discharged in October 1945 with the rank of Technician 5th Grade. After returning to New York, Lancaster, although initially unenthusiastic about acting, was encouraged by a producer to audition for a Broadway play. His performance in A Sound of Hunting, 1945, which lasted only 3 weeks, caught the attention of Harold Hecht, a Hollywood agent who promised him the opportunity to produce his own film. In 1946, Lancaster's appearance in The Killers, opposite Ava Gardner, became a critical and commercial success. The film not only made him and Gardner stars, but also helped define the noir style. Lancaster was known for his ability to combine grit and masculinity with emotional depth. Not long after, the peak of his career was marked by the formation of independent production companies. Keeping his promise, Hecht and Lancaster founded Norma Productions, later renamed Hecht Lancaster Productions. By 1955, James Hill became an equal partner, and the company became Hecht Hill Lancaster. This move was revolutionary because it gave Lancaster more control over his projects, allowing him to pursue more socially conscious and artistically ambitious films. A Trapeze, 1956. The first film under the HHL banner in which Lancaster used his past acrobatic skills, performing many of his own stunts. It was a huge box office success, and Lancaster won the Silver Bear for Best Actor. Marty, 1955. A film produced by HHL in which Lancaster did not star, it won the Academy Award for Best Picture and the Palme d'Or at Cannes. cementing HHL's status as one of Hollywood's most successful independent production companies of the time. Elmer Gantry, 1960. This role earned him an Academy Award and a Golden Globe for Best Actor. Birdman of Alcatraz, 1962. As Robert Stroud, a prisoner-turned-bird expert, Lancaster won the BAFTA Award for Best Foreign Actor and his third Oscar nomination. Atlantic City, 1980. His career was revived with this film, which earned him a BAFTA Award and a fourth Oscar nomination. In parallel with his film career, Lancaster was a strong supporter of progressive and liberal causes. He publicly supported the civil rights movement, opposed the Vietnam War, and fought against the death penalty. He was even placed on President Richard Nixon's 1973 enemies list. Notably, in 1963, Lancaster and his second wife, Norma, organized a fundraiser for Martin Luther King Jr. and the Student Diversity Leadership Conference before the historic March on Washington, and he was one of the speakers at the event. Behind the spotlight, Lancaster tried to keep his personal life private despite his star status. He married 3 times and had 5 children. His first marriage was to June Ernst, a trapeze artist, with whom he performed until their separation in the late 1930s. The ambiguity of the timing of their divorce, circa 1940-1946, has caused confusion about the history of his relationships. He married a second time in 1946 to Norma Anderson. Norma was a supporter of political and social causes. The couple had 5 children: Bill, actor-screenwriter, James, Susan, Joanna, film producer, and Seigel, Sheila. Despite their shared commitment to social issues, especially civil rights, their marriage was troubled and ended in separation in 1966 and divorce in 1969. Lancaster then had a long, tempestuous relationship with Jackie Bone, a hairdresser. His third and final marriage was to Susan Martin, which lasted from 1990 until his death in 1994. In terms of other relationships, some authors and media outlets have written that Lancaster was bisexual and had relationships with both men and women. He is said to have had an affair with Deborah Kerr during the filming of From Here to Eternity, 1953, and actress Shelley Winters claimed in her 1980 autobiography that she had a 2-year affair with him. Alongside these public and supposedly heterosexual relationships, Lancaster is known to have lived a complex, hidden personal life. Ironically, the deepest tragedy of Lancaster's life was not a plane crash or a financial scandal, but the burden of being imprisoned by the perfect public image he was required to project. His secret love affairs with famous men in old Hollywood were fateful inner events that only came to light belatedly, allowing the public to see the full complexity and contradictions of a man. According to public information throughout Hollywood's golden age, Burt Lancaster was a masculine icon, a screen hero, and a family man with 3 marriages and 5 children. This image was built on his stunt roles, adventure films like The Crimson Pirate, and war films like From Here to Eternity. The public, and perhaps the film industry, accepted only the strong Lancaster, a freedom fighter who dared to challenge the government but was completely heterosexual. However, as biographers have noted, some media and authors have written that Lancaster was bisexual. Lancaster himself in his later years revealed to close friends a chapter from his past, secret affairs with iconic male characters who were forced to live behind glass. This hidden truth lies in the very identities of the men Lancaster claimed to have dated, relationships that took place in privacy and mutual vulnerability. 1. Cary Grant, one of the most sophisticated and distinguished actors of his generation. The relationship between Lancaster and Grant was described as electric but cautious, taking place over secret weekends at beach houses along the Pacific Coast Highway. Grant maintained a carefully constructed image of sophisticated and attractive heterosexuality, and his fear of exposure was evident. The relationship ended because Grant retreated deeper into his fortress of secrecy, unwilling to risk his carefully preserved personal image. 2. J. Edgar Hoover, the most shocking name on the list. Hoover was the infamous FBI director who wielded immense political and cultural power. Although not an actor, Hoover had deep ties to Hollywood through his influence on depictions of law and morality. Their relationship, while not romantic in the conventional sense, was rife with power dynamics and secrecy. Lancaster describes Hoover as a man who desires intimacy but fears his own image. 3. Rock Hudson, a macho movie star whose relationship with Lancaster was described as more emotionally intense. Hudson, under the tight control of studio executives, lived in perpetual fear of exposure. Their love affair took place on long drives through the desert, away from paparazzi, where they could breathe freely, even if only for a weekend. The relationship fell apart not because of a lack of affection, but because of the impossibility of permanence in a world that demanded denial. 4. Ricky Nelson, a teen idol star, almost 2 decades Lancaster's junior. This brief and tumultuous affair took place in the early 1960s. Nelson found both a mentor and a protector in Lancaster. Lancaster ended it gently, believing Nelson needed space to find his own identity. 5. Marlon Brando, perhaps the most complex and brilliant character. The relationship, Lancaster recalls, was volcanic, fueled by ego, artistic rivalry, and a desire to conquer each other emotionally and physically. Brando, known for his gender fluidity and defying convention, captivated Lancaster with his intellectual debates and irresistible sensitivity. Lancaster calls Brando the only man I ever met who could make me feel completely shattered with just one look. The truth about these secret relationships is the crux of the story, because it exposes the root cause of the tragedy, the intense conflict between individual nature and the pressures of the 20th century Hollywood system. Systemic causes. Cover-up. Hollywood at that time operated on absolute image control. Bisexuality or homosexuality was not only taboo but also considered a career-ending threat. Studios created a massive cover-up system that forced stars to maintain a perfect facade. Lancaster, despite being a successful independent producer through Hecht Hill Lancaster, still had to adhere to rigid social norms to protect his career and the reputation of his company. The 1985 AIDS diagnosis of Rock Hudson showed the dire consequences of maintaining this secrecy. The most social causes. American society at the time, especially in the anti-communist and conservative post-World War II climate, did not tolerate any form of sexual deviance. For a masculine icon like Lancaster, who often played strong, action-oriented characters, admitting the truth would have shattered his entire brand. Although Lancaster was a progressive activist, fighting for racial equality and freedom of speech, ironically, he himself could not openly practice equality and freedom in his love life. Tony Curtis once commented about him, "He has the appearance of a big, aggressive athlete playing strong men, but the soul of Socrates, Plato. He is a Greek philosopher with the consciousness that all men are equal." The contradiction between this public political ideal and this personal concealment is the greatest tragedy. As personal cause, the need to pretend, protect, and suppress his true nature created a deep inner wound. Lancaster had to live a double life. On the one hand, a husband, a father of 5 children with Norma Anderson, a woman active in political activities. On the other hand, a seeker of love and intimacy with other men in the dark. These relationships, with Grant, Hudson, Brando, all took place in secret, could not have eternity, leading to a lonely and chaotic emotional life. The tipping point was not a single event, but the moment Lancaster, in his final years, sought to break free. Plagued by heart disease, complicated surgery in 1980, 2 minor heart attacks and bypass surgery in 1983, and finally a stroke in 1990 that left him partially paralyzed and almost speechless, Lancaster faced death. In this moment, he chose to reveal the truth to close friends. This act was not about seeking sensation, but liberation from decades of pretense. It was the moment he broke the oppressive silence of old Hollywood. Burt Lancaster's life was a great symphony of artistic talent, independent entrepreneurship, and courageous political commitment. He was a pioneer in gaining control of the arts through his production company, HHL, and a powerful voice in the civil rights movement. Yet his legacy is shaped not so much by what he did on screen as by what he was forced to hide behind the scenes, a secret love life driven by his bisexuality. This contrast encapsulates the tragedy of fame. A man who dared to fight for the freedom of others was forced to live in chains of his own. His story, revealed belatedly, is not only a page in cinematic history, but also an indictment of the suppression of individual identity by social norms and public pressure. What questions do the hidden truths about the personal lives of Lancaster and his famous peers raise about our trust in the figures we admire and whether we continue to force celebrities to bear invisible burdens just to fit the public image we want?